History has taught us how civilizations rise and fall, how wars are fought, and how empires disappear into silence. But there is one moment that history records without ever fully explaining: the final hour of a human life. Across centuries, cultures, and continents, humanity has feared it, questioned it, and tried to understand what truly happens when time runs out. What few know is that one woman, hidden in a convent in Poland, claimed that Jesus himself revealed what unfolds at the hour of death. Her name was Saint Faustina Kowalska. In the 1930s, while the world stood on the edge of war and uncertainty, Faustina lived a life that appeared ordinary, even invisible. She cleaned floors, cooked meals, and obeyed her superiors in silence. Yet behind the walls of her convent, she recorded conversations with Jesus that would later shake the spiritual understanding of millions. Among the most striking revelations found in her diary are those concerning the final moments of human life, the hour of death. According to Faustina, Jesus spoke to her not about death as humanity imagines it, but about what the soul experiences when it stands at the threshold between time and eternity. He did not describe chaos. He did not describe abandonment. Instead, he described a moment filled with grace, struggle, mercy, and a final invitation. Faustina wrote that Jesus told her he comes personally to every soul at the hour of death, not as a distant judge, but as the same Savior who walked the roads of Galilee. In her diary, she records his words with simplicity and gravity. At the hour of death, I defend as my own glory every soul that says this chaplet, or when others say it for a dying person. Diary 811. This statement alone challenges the common belief that death is a solitary moment where the soul is left alone. The revelation goes deeper. Faustina describes that the soul, at the moment of death, is given a final light, a moment of clarity, unlike anything experienced in earthly life. In that instant, the soul sees its entire life in truth, not through human memory, but through divine light. Love is revealed, missed opportunities are revealed, mercy is revealed. And the soul understands, perhaps for the first time, the depth of God's patience. This is not a peaceful moment for every soul. Faustina explains that this final hour is also a battlefield. Jesus told her that many souls resist grace even at the last moment, clinging to pride or fear. Yet he never withdraws his mercy. She records his words with solemn emphasis. Even if a soul were like a decaying corpse, my mercy is able to raise it up. Diary 1448. What makes this revelation so unsettling and so rarely discussed is that Jesus revealed the hour of death is not passive, it is active. The soul must respond. Grace is offered in abundance, but it must be accepted. This raises a haunting question. If mercy is offered at the final hour, why do so few prepare for it? What Faustina recorded next reframed the hour of death not as an ending, but as a decisive crossing. According to her diary, Jesus explained that in this final moment, the soul stands fully awake, freed from the illusions that once clouded its judgment. Earthly noise fades, time collapses, and what remains is truth. Faustina wrote that this clarity is both a gift and a trial, because the soul suddenly understands how deeply it was loved, how patiently it was pursued, and how often grace was postponed. In one striking passage, she noted Jesus' words about his presence beside the dying. I am present at the hour of death in a special way, reconciling the soul with God. Diary 1698. This presence is not symbolic, it is personal. Faustina emphasized that Jesus comes not to terrify, but to offer himself one final time, inviting trust where fear once ruled. Yet this moment is not without struggle. Faustina described how the soul, when faced with absolute truth, may experience a sudden resistance. Pride resurfaces, fear intensifies, the temptation to flee from light becomes strong. She recorded that Jesus showed her how some souls, even then, recoil, not because mercy is absent, but because surrender feels unbearable. The final hour reveals what the soul has practiced all its life, trust or avoidance. What makes this revelation especially unsettling is its implication. If the hour of death is a moment of decision illuminated by grace, then life itself becomes preparation, not through perfection, but through trust. Faustina repeatedly returned to this theme in her writings. She quoted Jesus saying, "Souls perish in spite of my bitter passion. I am giving them the last hope of salvation, that is, the feast of my mercy." Diary 965. The same mercy offered throughout life reaches its most intense expression at the final hour. Faustina also recorded that prayer offered for the dying has extraordinary power. Jesus told her that souls at the threshold of death are especially receptive to mercy, even when they appear unconscious or distant. The chaplet of divine mercy, she wrote, was given precisely for this moment. When they say this chaplet in the presence of the dying, I will stand between my Father and the dying person, not as the just judge, but as the merciful Savior. Diary 1541. This statement changes everything. It suggests that the hour of death is not dominated by fear, but surrounded by mercy, provided that someone somewhere intercedes. Faustina understood this as a call to responsibility. The living are not spectators at death, they are participants. A whispered prayer, a spoken chaplet, a simple act of trust can tip the balance of an eternal decision. As Faustina reflected on these revelations, she wrote with urgency, not fear. She understood that Jesus was not revealing these truths to frighten humanity, but to awaken it. The final hour is not meant to be faced alone. It is meant to be met with trust, cultivated over a lifetime and supported by the prayers of others. The question, then, is no longer what happens at the hour of death, but whether we are teaching the world how to meet it. As Faustina continued to write, another layer of the revelation emerged, one that unsettles even seasoned believers. Jesus showed her that the hour of death is not only a moment of mercy, but also a moment of profound honesty. Every illusion collapses. The soul no longer hides behind habits, titles, excuses, or appearances. In that instant, truth is no longer something to be interpreted. It is something to be faced. Faustina recorded that Jesus allowed her to understand how the soul experiences this encounter. It is not shown a list of sins like a courtroom accusation. Instead, the soul is immersed in light. And in that light it sees what it loved, what it avoided, and what it delayed. Love becomes visible, so does resistance. She described this experience as piercing but just, because the soul recognizes that nothing is exaggerated, nothing is distorted. In one of the most sobering passages of her diary, Faustina wrote Jesus' words, "At the hour of death, I will be mercy itself for the sinner, but for the soul that rejects my mercy, I will be justice." Diary 1698, thematic rendering. This does not suggest cruelty but consequence. Mercy is offered fully, yet it cannot be forced. The final hour reveals whether the soul has learned how to receive it. What makes this revelation so difficult to accept is its simplicity. According to Faustina, the decisive factor at death is not the number of sins committed, but the posture of the heart. A soul trained in distrust struggles to surrender. A soul trained in humility recognizes mercy instantly. Life then becomes a rehearsal, not for death but for trust. Faustina also noted something rarely discussed, the silence that surrounds the dying soul. Jesus showed her that as death approaches, the senses withdraw, but the soul becomes more alert than ever. This is why prayers whispered at the bedside are heard, even when the dying person appears unconscious. Faustina wrote with conviction that no prayer offered with love at that moment is ever wasted. She recorded Jesus' instruction clearly. Pray as much as you can for the dying. By your entreaties obtain for them trust in my mercy. Diary 1777. Trust, not fear, is the final battleground, and the soul does not fight alone. Heaven leans close. Grace presses in. Mercy surrounds. Faustina understood that many people fear the hour of death because they imagine abandonment. But Jesus revealed the opposite. He comes closer than ever. He speaks more gently than ever. He offers himself without measure. What determines the outcome is whether the soul has learned, even imperfectly, to say yes. As Faustina closed her notebook that night, she felt the weight of responsibility settle on her heart. These revelations were not meant to remain hidden in pages. They were meant to change how people live, how they pray, and how they accompany the dying. Because according to what Jesus shared with her, the hour of death is not a moment to fear. It is a moment to be prepared for. As Faustina reflected on everything Jesus had revealed to her, one conclusion became impossible to ignore. The hour of death is not an isolated event. It is the culmination of a lifetime of interior choices. According to what she recorded, Jesus made it clear that the soul does not suddenly become something new at death. It becomes fully what it has been slowly forming all along. The final hour reveals, rather than creates, the soul's orientation. Faustina wrote that Jesus explained how habits of trust shape the soul's final response. A heart accustomed to turning toward God, even imperfectly, recognizes His voice instantly when all other voices fall silent. But a heart trained to avoid truth, delay conversion, or rely on itself struggles to open when mercy stands closest. This is why, she understood, Jesus spoke so often to her about trust, not as an abstract virtue, but as preparation for the most decisive moment of human existence. In her diary, Faustina recorded a line that takes on enormous weight in this context. "The graces of my mercy are drawn by means of one vessel only, and that is trust." Diary, 1578. At the hour of death, there are no arguments left, no performances, no negotiations. There is only trust or its absence. And this is the secret few truly believe. Salvation at the final hour is not about recalling prayers or defending one's life, but about the soul's ability to abandon itself into mercy. Jesus also showed Faustina that fear itself becomes a temptation at death, not fear of suffering, but fear of surrender. The soul may sense that letting go means losing control forever. And yet, He revealed to her that this surrender is the very thing that opens the gates of peace. Mercy does not overpower the soul, it waits for consent. Even at the final breath, that consent remains possible. Faustina was deeply struck by how active heaven becomes at this moment. Angels gather, grace intensifies, Jesus draws near in silence and patience, and yet, despite all this divine closeness, the soul's freedom remains untouched. God does everything except force love. This, Faustina understood, is both the beauty and the risk of human freedom. She wrote with urgency because she realized how misunderstood death had become. People feared it as a moment of loss, when in truth, it is a moment of encounter. Others postponed spiritual life, believing conversion could always wait for later, unaware that later depends on whether the heart has learned how to trust. The hour of death is generous with mercy, but it is honest. It gives nothing artificial. It reveals what is real. In the final pages reflecting on these revelations, Faustina's tone is not dark, but insistent. She wanted the world to know that Jesus does not abandon the soul at death. He pursues it, He defends it, He offers Himself completely. But He also respects what the soul has chosen to become, and this is the revelation that changes everything. The hour of death is not ruled by fear, nor by judgment alone, but by mercy meeting freedom. It is the most intimate moment between the soul and God. History records dates, events, and endings, but what Saint Faustina revealed is something history cannot archive, the silent, decisive conversation that takes place when eternity begins.